All right, picture the scene. It's the year 1923 in Cairo. Inside the luxurious Continental Hotel, a wealthy British lord is tossing and turning in bed, literally burning up with a severe fever and gasping for breath. At exactly 1:55 a.m., he takes his last breath. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to unpack one of history's most infamous, terrifying, and honestly widely misunderstood supernatural mysteries. We are going to look at the undeniable tragedies, the absolute media circus that fueled a global panic, and finally, the hard science that brings the truth to light.
So listen to this ominous warning. It was supposedly inscribed outside a 3,000-year-old tomb that had just been unsealed. According to the legend, anyone who disturbed the slumber of the pharaoh would face absolute doom. And almost immediately after the tomb was opened, this inexplicable string of tragedies began to unfold that basically made the entire world believe this ancient curse was very, very real. Look at how quickly this mystery escalated. In November 1922, the tomb is opened. Fast forward just a few short months to April 5th, 1923. The expedition's main financial sponsor, Lord Carnarvon, dies of that terrible fever at 1:55 a.m. But here is the really chilling synchronization. At the exact moment he died, the entire city of Cairo suffered a total electrical blackout. The whole city just plunged into darkness. And as if that wasn't enough, thousands of miles away in England, Lord Carnarvon's pet dog suddenly started howling and dropped dead just hours later. I mean, no way, right? And the horror didn't stop there. This basically became an epidemic of bizarre tragedies. An American financier visited the tomb and died of a fever the very next day. A British industrialist suffered the exact same fate. The radiologist who dared to x-ray the mummy, he died suddenly too. The terror even reached the family members of the excavation team. The 78-year-old father of a secretary tragically threw himself from a 7th-floor window. Over the next 6 years, an astonishing 22 people connected to the tomb died under mysterious circumstances. The global panic was absolutely wild. To truly understand the stakes here, we need to step back for a second to November 1922. The archaeologist, Howard Carter, had just made what is arguably human history's greatest archaeological discovery. After 15 years of searching and literally almost running out of funding, he unearthed the fully intact tomb of a forgotten boy king named Tutankhamun. And inside, well, he found exactly 5,398 perfectly preserved objects. We're talking solid gold coffins, a 10-kilo gold death mask, daggers made from meteorite iron. The whole shebang sat exactly as it was left 3,000 years prior. Section 1. The Media Frenzy and the Cobra. With a discovery this monumental, you just know superstitions ignited instantly. It actually started when a cobra, which is a really powerful symbol of Egyptian royalty, devoured Howard Carter's pet canary inside its cage. Word spread like wildfire that the dead king's serpent had taken revenge. Then, the newspapers absolutely seized the narrative. In 1926, an autopsy of the mummy revealed a mysterious circular mark on the 3,000-year-old pharaoh's cheek. The papers printed the most shocking headline yet. They claimed this mark on the mummy was in the exact same spot on the exact same cheek where Lord Carnarvon had received a fatal insect bite that led to his death. For the public, this was the ultimate proof. The curse was undeniable. Section 2. The Real King Tutankhamun. Let's transition from the supernatural thriller the newspapers were printing and investigate the historical reality of who this supposedly vengeful spirit actually was. So, far from being some powerful, vengeful sorcerer, Tutankhamun was actually a tragically sick teenager. You see, ancient Egyptian royalty heavily practiced inbreeding, which led to devastating genetic consequences. Because of this, King Tut suffered from a severe clubfoot deformity. He also dealt with Kohler's bone disease, which is a really agonizing condition. And scientists have even found evidence of malaria in his mummy. He wasn't a terrifying phantom. He was a highly vulnerable boy who likely died at just 18 or 19 years old from a combination of all these illnesses. Just to emphasize his immense physical frailty, archaeologists found 130 walking sticks inside his tomb. And he wasn't collecting them for fun or ceremonial purposes. The harsh medical reality is that King Tut literally couldn't walk a single step without immense pain and physical support. Section 3. Science debunks the myth. It's time to pivot away from the superstitions and use hard science, logic, and a bit of media literacy to systematically dismantle these sensationalized headlines one by one. Let's start with the curse itself. That famous swift wings inscription we talked about? Yeah, it never existed. It simply wasn't on the tomb. It was completely fabricated. Basically, an amateur archaeologist fed the story to a sensationalist journalist.
When the reporter asked the excavation team about a curse, the team just smiled in silent amusement and didn't bother to deny it. And from that one smile, a journalist's imagination birthed the most famous curse in history. Crazy, right?
Okay, but what about the terrifying synchronization of the deaths and the blackout? Well, historians point out that in the 1920s, the Cairo power grid was incredibly unreliable. Rolling blackouts were a totally normal, everyday occurrence. It was pure coincidence. And the dog? Lord Carnarvon died at 1:55 a.m. Cairo time. His dog died at 4 a.m. in England. When you actually account for the time zone differences, the dog died hours later. So it was deeply sad for sure, but it wasn't some synchronized supernatural event.
Now let's look at the medical realities. Lord Carnarvon had actually traveled to Egypt because his health was already failing in the cold London winters. He accidentally sliced open a mosquito bite while shaving, and it became infected. Remember, this is 1923, years before penicillin was even invented. What's just a minor infection for us today was literally a death sentence back then. As for the other victims, thorough medical investigations showed almost all of them died from pre-existing conditions or entirely natural causes.
Now, there is one fascinating scientific twist here. In 1963, a doctor named Ezzeddin Taha discovered that some ancient tombs and mummies harbored a fungus called Aspergillus niger. This stuff can survive for thousands of years and causes severe respiratory inflammation when breathed in. It's actually highly likely this caused some of the unexplainable fevers among the staff. The irony? It's completely treatable with basic antibiotics. The further irony? Shortly after discovering this, Dr. Taha tragically died in a car crash, which, of course, the media immediately blamed on the curse.
But the absolute ultimate failure of the curse lies in the data. In 2002, a study published in the British Medical Journal tracked down 44 Westerners who were present in Egypt during the excavation. The data showed that the average age of death for the quote-unquote cursed individuals was 73 years old. They actually lived slightly longer than the general life expectancy for their social class at the time. Honestly, if the pharaoh was cursing them, he was doing a terrible job by accidentally extending their lives. Now, I have to point out a really dark irony here. Arthur Wagle was the special correspondent for the Daily Mail, and he was the guy who most aggressively invented and promoted the curse myth to sell papers. Well, he eventually died in Egypt of an undiagnosed fever, ironically becoming victim 21 of his own fictional creation. The myth he built literally swallowed his legacy. If a curse really existed, it should have targeted the people who physically disturbed the pharaoh the most, right? Well, let's look at the key figures. Lady Evelyn, one of the very first people inside the tomb, lived until 1980, dying at age 78. Dr. Douglas Derry, the guy who physically unwrapped and autopsied the mummy, lived to be 87 years old. And then there's the main target, Howard Carter, the man who orchestrated the entire dig, broke the seal, and removed the treasures. He lived for a full 16 years after opening the tomb, eventually passing away at the age of 64. For the rest of his life, Carter was absolutely hounded by the sensationalist press. Reporters constantly knocked on his door, asking him when he thought the deadly curse was finally going to strike him down. His standard, famously defiant response to the media was simply, "I am still alive." All right, Section 4, the true immortality. As we wrap up this explainer, let's shift our perspective and look at the ancient philosophy regarding death and legacy. The ancient Egyptians believed that you experienced two deaths. The first is when your physical body perishes, but the second, the final and true death, only happens when your name is spoken for the very last time on Earth. Tutankhamun's successors had intentionally erased his name from historical records. For 3,000 years, he was completely forgotten. He was truly dead. But by unearthing this fragile boy king, Howard Carter didn't trigger a curse. By bringing his name back to the lips of humanity, Carter granted Tutankhamun true eternal life. So, the question I'll leave you with is this. Are we, by simply talking about him today, actively participating in a 3,000-year-old spell of immortality? Think about it. Thanks for exploring this explainer with me today.